Okay, all right. Okay, so today we're going to talk about chapter 2 of You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And as I mentioned, that I'm very interested in the neuroscience, neurological perspective um, of what Louise Hay is suggesting us, okay, as the approach to healing. But what is the problem? What are the things we need to sort of look into? What are the things we need to become aware of so that we can understand what approach to pursue in order to heal ourselves or heal our lives? Okay, so this chapter talks exactly of that. So, um, right, so without any further ado, let's understand that. Okay. So the beginning of this chapter, right? Louise Hay really wants us to understand how we think, what is our thinking process, right? So we often think about when we talk about what the problem is, um, we often use phrases, we often use certain narratives like, oh, my body aches, or my relationships are not working, etc., etc. So these are some of the narratives that we are constantly using. But these are basically the starting points of our inward journey, so of our inward wiring, right? So the creation of patterns begins with our narratives, right? What are we thinking? And not just what are we thinking, but what are we thinking over and over again, right? So what people call problems are basically the biological and environmental result of a specific state of being, right? So you aren't just experiencing a bad life, you are experiencing the mathematical outcome of your current thoughts and feelings, right? So, in order for you to change your life, what Louise Hay um, advises us to do is that we have to change the energy that created it, right? So we have to change our perspective. We have to change our way of looking at things, right? When we change our perspective, things don't change, but when we change our perspective, our inner wiring changes, our inner environment changes. The environment outside might still be the same, but your way of seeing things helps you change your inner environment, right? That's how you heal yourself. Huh? All right. So that's basically what we're going to be looking at in detail today. Okay. So if you look at this slide, right, you're presenting complaints. What are basically they doing? They're merely a delayed chemical feedback loop, right? So they're merely creating a delayed chemical feedback loops, okay? And they manifest in three primary areas of your life. So they manifest in your health, your relationships, and your finances. And these are just some of the examples, right? In other words, these are the outer impact, outer effects of our inner wiring or inner patterns, right? So, most of us, if you think about it, most of us start the inner work or start this. Let me just see. Most of us start this inner work or start this, come into this inner work uh, because something outside of us isn't working, right? That's why they say that people say that the body hurts, or my boss is mean, or they don't have enough money and things like that, right? So things aren't working out because we are thinking a certain way. But I want you to know that these are simply our outer effects of our inner thought patterns, right? And when we talk about this from a neuroscientific perspective or a neuroscientific standpoint, your body is essentially your objective mind, right? Huh? So what is your body? It's basically your objective mind. It doesn't know the difference between a real life experience and an emotion created by thought alone, right? So, for instance, if you wake up and you're immediately thinking about financial lack, right, your brain fires a sequence that creates the feeling of lack, which then signals the body to stay in the state of survival. So, every single time um, you see something or you read an example about feeling of lack or poverty or whatever, your brain quickly latches on that circumstance or latches on that story and tries to correlate with the uh, thought that has been playing in your mind for probably years and years, right? And over, it's like a movie that's been playing over and over again, right? So that's how your subconscious functions, right? It's storing all these stories and it's attaching one story with another to prove to you that what you have been thinking, see, this is the proof of what you have been thinking. So, what is the way out of this? The way out of this is to interrupt your thought patterns. And we're going to come to that later on. But and we're going to talk about some of the techniques that Louise Hay talks about, right? So that's how do you change your narrative? How do you change your inner wiring, inner patterns, which are rather destructive and not serving you, right? So this is important for you to understand. So you're literally recreating the problem every single time you're thinking about it. Now, that being said, let's move forward to talk about um, so this is something that we can talk about that from every every outer effect ripples from a central neurological signal, right? So basically, your inner thoughts patterns they basically reflect in your cellular expression. So however you're thinking is going to translate into your cellular expression, your health. Then it's going to translate into your behavioral dynamics or your relationships. And it's also going to then translate in the outside world through quantum attraction. It's going to translate into, say, for instance, the amount of wealth, right? So your financial situation. And of course, that doesn't always mean that you're always creating lack. There are certain times, there are situations, circumstances that bring us in, certain situations, like circumstances over which we don't have any control, bring us into certain situations. However, nevertheless, if you if you know that you can rewire your thinking, you can rewire your thoughts, then you can change those situations despite the circumstances or challenging circumstances, right? So it all depends on um, how you understand this and then how you're able to grasp this concept and then purposefully change your thought process. Okay, so that being said, now Louise Hay talks about the word should. Now, most of our chapter, yeah, it focuses on what the problem is, and she talks about how different people, whenever they come to her, she asks them to present a list of what's not right in your in your life, what's going on in your life, right? So the list is really exhaustive, right? So let's have a look at the word should. And she has a specific understanding. She wants us to build a specific understanding around the narrative, the words that we use to describe ourselves or to talk about our lives, right? So she talks about the word should, and she says that the word should basically should be basically we must remove this from our vocabulary, right? So let's have a look at that. So this is one of the most damaging words as per Louise Hay's understanding. Why? Because every single time we use it, we are telling ourselves that we are wrong, right? If someone says you should do this, it's basically implying that what you have been doing is not correct, is not appropriate, and that you need to do what I'm telling you, right? So most of the times we're either telling ourselves that I should do this, I should be this, or you hear this from other people, right? So you hear this from other people that those people could be anybody, right? Those people could be your family, your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, your relatives, anybody, right? So this implies that we are either wrong now, uh, or we were wrong then, or we will be wrong soon, right? So it basically is implying the wrongness, right? So when you live in that state of should, you are anchoring your brain in a past to future loop. You're missing out on the present. What you're doing is creating that loop of past and future, right? So you're either, oscillating between past and future, right? Past, mistakes, guilt, fear, on the or the fear of the future, uncertainties of the future. You're trying to meet an external standard that was programmed into your subconscious probably decades ago. So, what basically this is, if I talk about this in neurological perspective, it's a neurological trap. uh, it's a neurological trap. You aren't choosing, you are reacting to some kind of old software that labels you as a failure even before you've begun. Okay, so that is why should what it does, it traumatizes your autonomic nervous system. Okay, so you see all these statements that people use the word should. So because I'm afraid not to, I should do this because I'm afraid to do this, or I should do this because my one of my parents told me to do this, right? So, and most of the times when we're using this word, if you really reflect on it, people use these words because they have been told, and it's almost like implying they've been told to do something, even though that wasn't their idea in the first place. They did not want it to do those things, they did not want it to be those things. They were told to be and do certain things, right? To be an engineer, um, be always and always disciplined, right? And you will notice that if you tell your children, for instance, tell your children to do something, you should do this, they're absolutely exactly they're going to do the opposite of what you ask them to, right? Why is that? Because children are quite innocent. Their programming is still in the process, right? Especially younger children. They are very much in that state of um, unawareness. Then they're not too aware of themselves. What do you mean by being too aware of yourself? Being too aware of yourself meaning being too self-conscious. Too self-conscious. It can be seen as in a positive way, and it can be seen in a very negative way. Negative way could be when you're over conscious of yourself, right? You're not too confident in your own decisions, and so you're relying on external approvals, and you're relying on external instructions to actually uh, make your decisions, right? So your decision making process is constantly dependent on outside stimulation, right? That's where when you're consistently being programmed into instructional way of being in the world, you're being in the world based on what you're being told to do, versus listening to your own self, listening to your own intuitive self, then what you're doing is you're traumatizing your nervous system. And that's when you start using these phrases that I need to do this, I need to do this because I should do this because this person expects me to do this. Right? So Louis Hay says that this is one of the most destructive vocabulary. Take it out of your narratives. Okay, so what she suggests is that you should replace your should with could. Why does she say that? Right? She advises us to remove the should altogether from our vocabulary and replace it with could, because could gives us the freedom and the choice. So when I say that if I really wanted to, I could, what does it do? It's putting a whole new perspective, whole new light on the subject, and it helps us realize that we may have been sort of berating ourselves for things that we never even intended or never even wanted to do in the first place. Okay, you must try this specific food. You might even hate that on the inside, but you're just going to go and try it anyways because somebody's insisting. Now, how many times have you found yourself going for a dinner invitation and somebody insists, please try it once, try it at least once, zara sa, thoda sa, and unwillingly you end up doing that. Why? Because you don't want to disappoint the other person. That's the first, that's your first, and a very, very basic example, right? That we sort of hide under this whole concept of courtesy. Courtesy is not always, having to agree to what everybody is asking you to do. Courtesy is simply, just being respectful, respectfully saying, being able to say yes or being able to say no, right? It's not always about saying yes, right? That's what she's trying to tell you, that you need to be able to approve of yourself and your choices instead of depending on the outside stimulation or instruction. Okay, so when you shift from should to could, it moves you from a fixed neurological loop into a quantum field. A quantum field, as in the quantum field, if I would tell you in the most simplest way, is the field of possibility. So when you are, beyond yourself in a meditative state, you're able to reach that quantum field. You're able to create through the quantum field, right? When you're able to, for instance, achieve the brain heart coherence, which means that दिल और दिमाग दोनों एक ही तरह से सोच रहे हैं. हाँ, your brain and your heart is aligned. Your heart is sending out love and your brain agrees, right? Your brain and heart have to be coherent, and we are able to achieve that when we sit in deep meditation, when we are able to focus on our heart center. Okay, so again, we are going to practice some of those things in our later sessions, some of those techniques, so that you can really understand from a neuroscience perspective that what Louise Hay talks about are some really amazing techniques that she talks about. Okay, and we're going to see them through neuroscience as well. So, shifting from should to could basically moves you from a fixed neurological loop into a quantum field of creation of possibility. So you stop being a victim of your conditioning or your circumstances, and you start becoming the architect of your own choices, right? You start telling your frontal lobe to look for a new way to behave, right? Which begins to fire and wire new connections in your brain, right? So when Louise Hay advises us to move from should to could, she's targeting the roots of self criticism. We often find ourselves in that state of self criticism because we feel so disappointed for having disappointed other people, right? So, what does that result in? It results in self criticism. I know I can do this. I should have done this. I don't know why I did not do this. Maybe your heart did not want to do this. Maybe your heart did not want to follow a certain career path, or maybe your heart did not want to, become a certain person or adopt a certain way of being or presenting yourself, or wear a certain kind of clothing, right? But are, we find ourselves as products of a lot of conditioning that we've received right from childhood to our growing years, and not just from our families, but from so many environments we have been exposed to, right? But the beautiful thing is that when we become aware, we're able to shift our perspective and we're able to choose wisely. Okay. So she says, using the example of the vocabulary, that we need to also be careful about the kind of words we use. And this is one example that she says, that switch from should to could. Now, one of the things that she is going to talk about throughout in her book, and if you listen to her lectures, if anybody has access to any of her actual CDs from the 70s, you will know that she talks a lot about mirror work, right? So basically, it's sort of an intervention, so, right? It's a self intervention wherein looking into the mirror it becomes this act of facing all your fears and your um, self berating criticisms, okay, which are very destructive, right? So what this means, it means facing the self. This is for Louise Hay the practice of facing the self. So this is one of the most powerful things that she advises people to do. So pick up a mirror and look deep into your own eyes and say your name, and then you can, you can, first thing that you should be able to do is say that I love you and I accept you as you are, exactly as you are, right? So the antidote to self-criticism and using all those self-berating narratives is the uh, self-approval. Yeah, doing the opposite, which is actually what you are looking for. You're looking for approval. I wish that person would have been happier with me and not disappointed because I could not do this. Instead, give yourself a break and approve of yourself, that I'm worthy, I love myself just as I am, exactly as I am. Huh? And she says that for a lot of people, this process of telling yourself, looking in your own eyes and telling yourself is a difficult process. Why? Because years and years of criticism, you've only seen faults, you've only seen flaws in yourself, right? You criticize yourself for your features, you criticize yourself for just the way you are, right? Because remember that not everybody outside of you is going to accept you just the way you are. Right? People are always going to take out faults and tell you these are faults in your being, these are faults in the way you present yourself, or these are faults in the way you look, right? So if we're only listening to those narratives and not doing any work on ourselves, um, you know, that's where we go in the downward spiral of feeling bad, feeling low. But we have to interrupt that loop. How do we interrupt that loop? We interrupt that loop by through mirror work, by consciously becoming uh, aware of the fact that our imperfections are absolutely perfect. Okay, so she talks about this concept of self acceptance. All right, why is this so difficult? Because the moment you try to love yourself, everything comes to loving yourself. She says that the root of all the problem, every single problem, is that you don't love yourself enough because you don't accept yourself enough. You don't approve of yourself enough. So she says that why is this so difficult? It is difficult because the moment you try to love yourself or accept yourself, you hit that analytical mind. What is that analytical mind? The analytical mind is the barrier between your conscious and subconscious. Your body is habituated to self criticism. But when you look inside the mirror at the neurological level, it's the old hardware that is fighting for its life, which is why you feel, sometimes you feel angry, sometimes you even feel mad at yourself. It's the old patterns that will come back. You'll still see sometimes when you start doing this practice, you'll find yourself feeling, having all those old patterns, all old thoughts coming back. You'll because you're wired to think a certain way, you have been wired to think a certain way, those thoughts will come. But that discomfort, when you feel that discomfort, that's the time when you need to persist. You need to be consistent. Stay with yourself. Stay with yourself. And if you have to yell, if you have to scream out loud, say it out loud. I love and accept myself just as I am. And that practice is going to be the first step to breaking the old patterns. Okay. So what she advises is when you don't look away when you're looking at the mirror, and if you have tears that fall down, if you feel angry, if you have old patterns, old thought process that comes to you, you might even end up trying to look for flaws and focus on flaws. Bring your attention back to your eyes, look into your eyes, and tell yourself this narrative: I love and approve of myself. And do this consistently every day, every morning you wake up. Write it down. Write it down. 369. Do you know this concept of 369? Write down something that you want to solidify. 369, it could be a goal, it could be an affirmation, 3 times in the morning, 6 times in the afternoon, and 9 times before going to bed. Write it, repeat it with your hand on a piece of paper, not on your iPad or anything. Why? Because there is a whole, magical thing that happens when you're writing something with your hands. Okay, so this is also something that you can do along with your mirror work practice. Okay, so she talks about being present when you do this. So now she says that now this is the practice of self-love, right? The mirror work. Declaring self-love, what it does, it disrupts the default mode network. It completely disrupts the default, that is the wiring that has been going on in our heads. How does it do that? It silences the old chatter. Uh, Louise Hay describes the mind as having a tendency towards the old chatter, the mental chattering, which is often composed of self criticism and the shoulds. So, in neuroscientific perspective, when we talk about this default mode network, it is simply the system that becomes active when we are not focused on the outside world. Okay, it's a system that becomes active when we are not focused on the outside world. It is where we ruminate. We're ruminating over the past, or we're worrying about what lies in the future. So, what Hay talks about is that when we declare, I love and approve of myself, we're basically telling ourselves, right, that you need to stop telling our minds to stop running the old negative patterns that have been programmed for decades and decades, and now focus on the new present moment reality. And then she has one of the most this beautiful phrase that I remember I talked about last time, which is that point of power is always in the present moment. This is why she talks about it. That ruminating in the past, it does not help us. Revisiting past stories does not help us. Worrying about the future makes it worse. What can you do? You can only use right now, most productively, the present moment to make the best choices. Right? So the point of power always lies in the present moment. That's the way you can change the old patterns that your brain has been rehearsing. The old traumas have to be let go. But when we talk about letting go, we wonder that how can I let go? How can you let go if you keep thinking about it? And the only way to not think about it is by focusing on the present moment. And that's where the meditation comes in. Because in meditation, what we do is we focus on the present moment. We focus on the breath, right? So we are sort of disconnecting from the past and disconnecting from any worry or fear or whatever thought about the future. We are only in the present moment, right? And the narrative change also begins in the present moment. No matter what you have been thinking and how you have been feeling about your past actions, how you have been judged, how you have been perceived by others, and how you have perceived yourself, it does not matter. What matters is your present moment. In the present moment, what narratives am I going to use? What am I going to change? The change only begins when you begin, right? So that's what she talks about. A change begins with your narratives. Change your words, change your life. Has anyone heard this before? Change your words, change your life. It's a very powerful quote and it's very meaningful. So now she talks about that by bypassing superficial complaints to isolate the core circuitry. So this is neurological wording. So anyway, don't worry about not being able to understand some of this neurological wording, okay, neuroscience-based wording that I've used in the slides. But it's very important to understand that to recognize the patterns, we need to understand that we need to stop complaining. We need to stop telling ourselves the stories of or the narratives of self-beration, right? So we don't love ourselves in so many ways, Louise Hay says. She says that we scold ourselves, we mistreat ourselves, Oops. And we complain about whether we complain about our physical characteristics or we complain about outside problems, right? The more we complain about ourselves, the more we mistreat ourselves, isn't it? Right? So if we deny our good in any way, huh, it's simply if us mistreating ourselves or using words or using narratives which are destructive is basically what we're doing is we're denying ourselves the good. We're denying ourselves the niceness. Okay. And that is not an act of loving. That's a destructive act, right? So every single time you repeat a self-deprecating thought, you're making a mental deposit into your bank of lack, right? Your brain becomes addicted to the chemicals of stress. Your brain becomes addicted to the chemicals of unworthiness, narratives of unworthiness. So all of these narratives that she talks about are the narratives of unworthiness, and you need to change that. So to change, you must become conscious of these unconscious habits. How many times, if you're not saying these things out loud, how many times we are repeating some of those narratives in our heads, isn't it? We look at ourselves and we immediately make a statement that is a statement of unworthiness, and so we need to change that. Okay. And this is one of the statement is again one example that we consciously or unconsciously are consistently using for ourselves and even sometimes for others, but mostly for ourselves. So the most people who use these statements for other people are the people who are using these statements for themselves. So assess yourself. Have you been using this statement for anybody outside of you? And then assess, think about it, reflect on it. Have you been using this statement for yourself? Huh? So sifting through the complaints, Louise says that we always find the central issue. When looking at all of the different kinds of complaints that people come up with or self-deprecating, narratives that people use, you always find the central issue. And the central issue is the belief that they are not good enough. So people criticize themselves left, right, and center because they've had, they've probably learned that they don't deserve good things through their experiences or through whatever conditioning that they've received in the past. They have learned that they don't deserve good things, right? So when someone says that they're not good enough, what is basically happening in your brain? It's almost like it's like a software that is that's become your identity. Remember that if have you heard people say this is a very old saying, you become the people you hang out with, right? Because the people you hang out with, the kind of narratives you're listening to, you're going to, take in those narratives. That's what you become. You become like them. So they say, choose your sangat carefully. Choose the people you hang out with carefully. Similarly, choose the kind of thoughts you're surrounding yourself with as well, carefully. Choose the narratives that have been running in your head. Look at what are the narratives running in your head unconsciously. If you think about this, let me give you one example, and I know that you're all going to relate to this. You've had an argument, say for instance, with somebody, XYZ person, 2 hours before. You haven't been able to resolve it. If you haven't resolved it, that argument is actually still running in your head. And when you're not thinking consciously, you'll find unconsciously still fighting with that person in your head. Has it happened to someone? Give me the raise of hand. Tell me if this has happened to someone. And it's okay if you don't want to. It's okay if you don't want to say it either. That's fine. But this is something that's very, very common. We consciously continue fighting with the same people we've had debates or we've had some kind of tension with, right? We continue having the same kind of narrative going on in our head unconsciously, right? So the unconscious, these are the unconscious narratives are what we need to be very, very careful of, right? and we need to catch them in the act. The moment we find that there is an unconscious thought, catch it and then tell your mind, now I change my narrative. Now I change my wording. Now I let go. So you have to instruct your mind. And then Louis Hay talks about, something so beautiful. Babies, they never hold on to anything too tightly. If you've observed, think about the time when you were babies, right? When you were a baby, you didn't have anything. You didn't want to be perfect. You didn't have anything to do with being perfect because you already were. You already are, even now. You were the center of universe when you were a baby, and you were full of love, and you weren't afraid to ask for what you wanted. You did not bother about being judged. You were just happy with yourself. You loved every person. You loved every part of your body. Everyone who came and, wanted to hold you, play with you, you were happy. Huh? Children are like that, right? Because we say that, oh, children are innocent. But it's not that. It's the unconditioned blueprint. You have you have been conditioned to become a certain way that you are, right? To feel a certain kind of lack, right? But when you were a baby, you never felt any kind of lack. They freely express their emotions. Babies do not have, they have nothing to do with becoming perfect, right? They act as if they know they are perfect. They are always happy, smiling. When they're not happy, they openly cry, they express themselves, right? They love every single part of their body, right? So, what is that? It's your baseline state. It is that state of pure consciousness. huh? So, before you were, being a state in which a baby is a state of pure consciousness, right before you were conditioned by your environment. Yeah, so your family, teachers, your culture, your relatives, your neighbors, things you read on in books, or things you saw on television or heard on the radio. All of those things conditioned you, right? Limited you, or made you feel limited somehow, right? So what Louise Hay does is that she's trying to do this, help you in this work of unlearning your conditioning, letting go of your conditioning, right? And returning to that original frequency of wholeness. uh, Wholeness that you had once forgotten. You were always born a master, you just forgot. But how can you remember it? Reminding yourself. How can you remind yourself? You can remind yourself by self approving, by approving of yourself consistently. Okay, so this process of self approval, she talks about through the mirror work. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this daily protocol to wire in the new consciousness. Okay. Rewiring our brains. How do we do that? Okay. So we'll talk about it in 3 steps. Catch the shoulds. Pivot immediately to could to engage neuroplasticity. What does that mean? Okay, it means you're telling your brain that yes, you're absolutely capable, but you're making a decision, a sound decision based on your choices, your likes or dislikes or whatever, right? You don't have to do something because if somebody is asking you to do, okay? And you don't have to keep on berating yourself based on the expectations of anybody else outside of you in the past or in the future. Now, most of the times in the past. All right. So, and then she talks about the daily mirror work, looking in your eyes and declaring, I love you and I accept you. I love you and I approve of yourself. I approve of myself. Or looking at yourself and saying, I love, if you want to say your name, I love Jess, or I love myself, or I love you, Jasmine, and I completely approve of you. So you can say this in 2 different ways, but usually when I do this mirror work, for instance, I can look at myself in the mirror and I can say, look in my eyes and say, I love you, I love myself, and I approve of myself. I just say, I love myself and I approve of myself. And sometimes I can take my name and I can say, I love you, Jess. I love you completely. I accept you just as you are. Okay. And this has to be done. Do it with your heart. And if sometimes your heart is not saying yes to what this practice is asking you to do it anyways. Okay. Refuse self-criticism, because criticism, what it does, it locks you into the old patterns, and approval breaks those patterns. Right. So this beautiful rhythm of daily practice, and like a child that learns to walk, you have to rewire and train your mind with these gentle, consistent, repetitive uh, narratives. Okay. I don't want you to think of this as hard work, right? But it's work. You have to sit with yourself and you have to do this. But think of this as an act of loving yourself, as an act of fully accepting yourself. It's almost like you're trying to create a mental diet, right? That nourishes your soul just as much as good food. Okay, just as much as good food nourishes your body, right? So this is the fundamental aspect of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, how does your neuro circuits develop when you learn something new? And so breaking out of the old patterns and creating new ones takes a little bit of work, a little bit of patience, and a lot of love. Okay, all right. So, so this is the miracle cure that she gives us. This is the miracle cure that she provides us with this statement, uh, that all is well in my world. Everything is perfect, whole, and complete. In the infinity of life, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And that the point of power always and always lies in the present moment. When we really love and approve of ourselves, just as we are, exactly as we are, our authentic selves, with the flaws, with the imperfections, what happens? We automatically change the perspective towards life. Now everything in life is going to work, right? If you look at the winter and you crib, I don't see the plants. I don't see the greenery. I don't see the flowers. That's what you are rewiring yourself to see. But if you change your perspective and you start embracing the winter, start embracing the snow, then you'll even find beauty in there, right? You'll even find beauty in, um, I don't know, uh, trees that have lost their leaves just momentarily, just for a few months, but they will come back. You see the beauty in everything, right? So let's affirm together. Let's affirm together that in the infinity of life, I want you to do this. Say it out loud for yourselves. Okay, so you hear your voices. In the infinity of life, where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And don't just say it. I want you to feel these words. Okay, when you say this from your heart, in the infinity of life, all is perfect, whole, and complete. What it does, it actually signals your brain that all is perfect, all is well. There is wholeness, your integrity, uh, completeness, right? There is no lack, there's nothing missing. It's supposed to be just the way it is supposed to be, right? It will help you change your breathing. You will notice that your heart rate immediately changes, right? Softens, right? It brings you in that state of homeostasis. Homeostasis is a state where every part of your body, your entire system is working in sync, in harmony, right? So let this thought pattern, oops, let this thought pattern become your primal thought, huh? That in the infinity of life, All is perfect, whole, and complete. And all is well in my world. You aren't just, you know, doing this for the sake of doing it. You're truly rewiring your understanding. You're truly rewiring your brain. So uh, let's look at one more time about what does it mean, right? I want you to take out your mirrors. If you have your pocket mirrors with you, take out your pocket mirrors. And if you don't have your pocket mirrors with you, um, you know, uh, do this practice with me right now. Repeat it with me right now. If you want to open your cameras, you can open your cameras and you can look at yourselves, and then you can do this practice. And make sure to do this practice later on after the session. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do this practice together. Okay, so all is well in my world. I want you to look at yourself, but let me open my camera. Let me see. Uh, I can see myself. So I'm going to look into my mirror and I'm going to say this out to myself. Okay. I also have my pocket mirror. It's over there, but I can use this since I have the camera. Okay. So you can open your cameras. Don't be shy. Unless, of course, it's very late. It's very, very early for you and you don't want to open your cameras. That's okay. But these are the sessions where you'll have the chance, the opportunity to do this. So don't feel conscious. You're welcome to come as you are. Okay. So let's do this practice together. In the mirror, looking at ourselves, all is well in my world. Okay, I want you to say it out loud so your ears can hear. You can mute yourselves, keep yourselves muted, but say it out loud so you can hear yourself, and the others can also practice. Okay, so you can mute yourselves, but you can say it out loud for yourselves. Okay. And Shashiji, I'm going to mute you, and it's okay, but make sure to practice. Perfect. Thank you so much, Shashiji. Okay. Sorry, it was Meeta. It was somebody else. I'm sorry. Yeah, but practice with me. Okay, as you making sure that your ears listen to your voice, because you have to make sure that your mind gets used to listening to your own voice. Loving yourself begins with accepting yourself completely. I know people I've heard who say that I don't like to hear myself, I don't like to hear my voice. That's not, even if you don't like to hear your voice right now, you have to practice, start doing this. Okay, eventually you are going to accept yourself fully. Huh? So let's start with this first affirmation. All is well in my world. Say it out loud. All is well in my world. Everything is working out for my highest good, right? If you don't want to look in your mirrors, you can close your eyes. Okay, this is a mirror work, but if you don't want to look in your mirrors, another way of doing this. I mean, right, if you don't have the mirror right now, that is, okay? Taking both your hands, placing them on your heart and closing your eyes, connecting with your heart. Okay, this is another way. Okay, but I would encourage you to do the mirror thing. But if you don't have a mirror right now, you can do this. Connecting with your heartbeat. See if you can feel your heartbeat. And then say it out loud. So your eyes, so your heart can listen and your ears can listen. Okay? All is well in my world. Everything is working out for my highest good. Everything is working out for my highest and bestest good. I used to say this in ICU. I remember I used to say this. I used to do this, close my eyes, sitting on my ICU bed, and I used to say this: all is well in my world. Everything is working out for my highest good. And then I would throw in healing affirmations like I'm healing perfectly, I'm getting healthy every day, every second. And trust me, it really does work because you just surrender to the universe and you're putting complete faith in the universe and rewiring your narrative. I love and approve of myself. I love and approve of myself just as I am. I love and approve of myself just as I am. Living in joy and abundance is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. Living in joy and abundance is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. I can see you guys. Some of you are using these affirmations. Fantastic. I love you guys for that. Once again, let's do this. Place your hands on your heart, and whether you're looking at the mirror or you're with your eyes closed, if you don't have the mirror, living in joy and abundance is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. Living in joy and abundance is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. Living in joy, and you can add good health and abundance, is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. How does it feel? Feels good? Telling the universe that you're reclaiming your power now. What do you mean by why do we use the word now? I would advise you use the word now at the end of each and every sentence. It's going to change, it's going to transform you. All is well in my world now. Why? Because you're not talking about kal theek hoga, parso theek hoga, narso theek hoga. Now, present moment. Okay? All is well in my world now. Everything is working out for my highest good now. I love and fully approve of myself now. Living in joy, good health, and abundance is my birthright, and I reclaim my power now. Okay? How does it feel, you guys, if you're practicing this? Yay! I love that. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I want you to practice this. And this brings us to the close of the session. I want you to practice this every single morning. Make this your morning routine. Make this your early morning routine. Moment you get up, whether, we have sessions every Saturday, right? You have the rest of the week to practice. Every morning, make this your morning routine. Before going to bed, make this your going to bed routine, bedtime routine. है ना? ओके ब्रशिंग का रूटीन है सबका है ना कपड़े wearing comfortable clothes, taking a shower, add this to your routine. Early morning, showered, before your breakfast, before you engage with a world. This is best done in the morning before you engage with the world around you. Before you start answering to the needs and the demands of the world around you, answer to the demands of your own self. Prioritize yourself. And then you will feel so much better. You will feel so much good. And then you'll come back to the world around you with far more openness and love. Okay? But I'm telling you, and I've experienced this firsthand. Anytime anytime in the past, I did not prioritize myself. I felt, I felt exhausted. And it's not that kind of exhaustion that comes to you in the beginning. You don't get to know about it in the beginning, but as the day progresses, you find yourself in that lack of energy, and you feel that something is missing. What is missing? It is the time, the work that you have to do on yourself that's missing. Your love for yourself is missing. Okay, so you have to prioritize yourself. This morning, I'll tell you what happened this morning. This morning, we woke up and we had construction work here, so in my apartment. and my landlord and some worker, they had come to do that work. The entire day that work went. You know what I did? Because the moment I got up, the early morning, the work had started. The first thing I did, I didn't even have a glass of water. I just wore my jogging, clothes. It had snowed yesterday, but I was like, I'm just gonna pack myself, have just a sip of water, and get out. I just went out. That because of that construction work was going on, I couldn't do anything else. I was like, I'm just gonna start my day with a walk because sometimes my walks get delayed because of the cold. So now I'm like, okay, this is a good reason for me to just start my day with abundant self talk, right? So I went out, I did my this practice, my morning practice, my walk, and my self talk, good narratives, positive narratives. And when I came back, I didn't care about the dust. I didn't care about the fact that I have to clean up and all that. I was just really relaxed. The rest of the day went well. It is chaos in my apartment. I'm still trying to figure things out because the work hasn't been completed. However, it did not bother me. It did not overwhelm me. Okay. I went out, I did, some other work that I had to do. I went to the library, then I came back and I'm like, I'm happily taking this session. Why? Because I started my day in a very positive, with the right tone. Taking time out for yourself and doing this practice for yourself is not something that's only going to benefit you. It's going to benefit those around you because you are going to bring your best selves in front of others, your family, the people you're meeting, right? So that brings us to the close of the session. Thank